Hey guys, what's up? Generic Jack here, and today I'm going to do my prediction for the 2024 presidential election, which is in 8 months. So this is a March prediction. And also, I'm only going to include Trump and Biden. They're most likely going to get the nominations. I'm not going to include third party candidates in this prediction, it's just going to be the top two candidates. So, first, let's go with the states I feel would be safe for Biden, which would be guaranteed for Biden: Washington, California, Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Maryland, D.C., Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, and Maine's 1st Congressional District. These would go by a safe margin. Right, and then Trump. So Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, almost all of Nebraska except for the 2nd Congressional District, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Indiana. So these are the safe states. These are states that are guaranteed for the candidates. Trump 122, Biden 173. Next we have likely. There's a good chance they'll go to them, but not as guaranteed. Oregon, you could say it'd be safe for Biden, but over the last few years, it's really seemed to be almost lean, and went for Biden not really only by like 16% in 2020, like so just above 15% to be considered safe, and that was around the same time a lot of states went for the Democrats. So I feel like Oregon would be a likely state. It could be safe, who knows. Colorado, same thing. It would be a likely state. It was a bellwether state for a long time, but then in 2020, it went for Biden by like 13%. It really shifted. So, yeah, even then, I feel like Trump would have a lot of ground to make up for if he wanted to make the state competitive. So I feel like it would go for Biden by like 10%. New Mexico and Virginia both went for Biden by about 10%. And I feel like they'd be going like somewhere around 8% this election. So these are the states I feel would be likely for Biden. For Trump, Ohio, a swing state for a long time that shifted Republican. I see it going Republican like 10% this election. Then you have Iowa. Iowa really, it used to be somewhat Democratic, but then it shifted Trump by 15% in 2016. The biggest shift in the whole country, in fact. And he still went for Trump by a decent margin in 2020, and I feel like it would go for Trump in this election. You could say it'd be safe, but even then, I feel like it would be a likely state. Then you have Alaska. Used to be a solid red state, but has slowly shifted to likely. Went for Trump by 10% in 2020. I feel like it would go the same this election, not much really changes. And Maine's 2nd Congressional District, for a long time it voted Democratic, but then it voted for Trump in 2016, and even in 2020 it still voted for the Republican candidate Trump by about 20%. Sorry, not 20%, by about 7%. And I still feel like it'd be likely around the same amount. Texas, I feel Texas, a lot of people said it was a swing state in 2020. It went for Trump by about 5%. In 2016, it only went for Trump by about 9%. It used to be really solidly Republican, but it's been slowly shifting. But I feel like this time it's not going to be a swing state. Not a lot of people have called it as a swing state, and it's slowly kind of shifted back to the Republicans. And yeah, so I feel like Texas would go for Trump by like 8%, somewhere like Ohio. It would not be safe, but it wouldn't really be competitive. Next up is lean states. These are like the swing states. So first for Biden, we have Minnesota. Minnesota has not voted for a Republican candidate since 1972. And in 2016, it voted for Biden by 7%. A lot of ground for Trump to make up for. So yeah, I feel like it would go for Biden by somewhere around like 3%. Maine at large, or the whole state of Maine, went to Obama by a safe margin in 2012, but then went for Clinton by like 3%. And in 2020, it went for Biden by like 9%, almost 10. So I feel like Maine would be like a competitive state, but not tilt, not like less than 1%. I'd say somewhere like 4 and 3%. And then you have Nebraska's 2nd district. Now, you could say it could go for Trump by a tilt margin, possibly Biden for a tilt margin, but Biden won in Nebraska's 2nd district by nearly 7%. So like Minnesota, a lot of ground for Trump to make up for. I feel like it would go for Biden by about the same as Minnesota, 2-3%. Well, maybe more like 1 and 2%. But yeah, not close. For the Republicans, first we have Florida. So Florida, like Ohio, it used to be a swing state, but then it slowly shifted toward Trump. And even in 2020, it voted for Trump by around almost 4%, or a little more than 3%. And in 2022, it reelected Republican Governor Ron DeSantis by 20%. He beat the Democratic candidate Charlie Crist by about 20% in that election. I feel like Florida has really shifted toward the Republican. I don't think Trump will win the state by 20%, but I feel like he'd win by a decent amount. I guess you could make the argument it'd be likely, but I'm going to go with leans, like a little less than 5%. North Carolina, over the last few elections, averages around 2%. I think it's going to go for Trump by about 3% this election. And next, this is going to be an interesting one, Wisconsin. Wisconsin was usually a swing state for a while, voted for Trump by less than 1% in 2016, but voted for Biden by less than 1% in 2020. And I feel like the state's been like slowly shifting toward the Republicans, and I think it's going to be lean, so a little more than 1%. Okay, so now we have tilt states. These are states that are going to go by less than 1%, or at least be like really competitive. First, Nevada. Nevada hasn't gone for a Republican candidate since 2004. That was George W. Bush. And in 2016, it went for Clinton by about 2.4%, and it also went for Biden by about 2.4%. And in 2022, it elected a Republican governor. And I feel like Nevada has slowly shifted toward the Republicans, and I feel like it's going to vote Republican in 2020. Then you have Arizona. Since 1948, Arizona has only voted for a Democratic candidate twice. Since 1948, 1996 being the first time, it went to Clinton by like 2%. Then 2020, as we know, it went for Trump, it went for Biden. This was one of the more controversial states. Went by less than 1%, and I feel like it's going to be tilt for Trump. Georgia, voted for Republican for a while since the 90s, and in 2020 it voted for Joe Biden, but this was the closest state by like less than 0.3%. No, less than 0.3%, I believe, that year. So yeah, Georgia was really close, and I feel like it's going to go for Trump. Could be lean, but I feel like it's going to be tilt. Then we have Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is an interesting one. Went for Trump by less than 1% in 2016. It went for Biden by about 1% in 2020. And then in the midterms, it really shifted toward the Democrats. Democrat Josh Shapiro was reelected by 15% against Doug Mastriano. In the Senate election, John Fetterman was able to beat Mehmet Oz by about 5%. Now, you could say that these weren't good Republican candidates. Oz wasn't really that much of a likable candidate, and Doug Mastriano was a very controversial candidate for governor. And while I feel like Pennsylvania would still go for the Republican Trump in this election, I think it would be like a tilt margin, possibly the closest state. The only other state I think would be closer would be Michigan. Michigan went for Trump by less than 1% in 2016, the closest state in the whole election. Then went for Biden by about 3%. And I feel like this year it's going to go for Trump by like a tilt margin, possibly closer than Pennsylvania, but around the same level. And finally, New Hampshire. New Hampshire has always hated incumbents. In 2004, it shifted toward John Kerry from Bush when it voted in Bush 2000. In 2008, it voted for Obama by 10%, then it voted for him by 6% in 2012. It was the closest state in 2016, the second closest state in 2016, and voted for Clinton by less than 1%. But in 2020, it voted for Biden by 7%, more than Minnesota, as a matter of fact. And I feel New Hampshire would most likely be a lean state. It could be tilt. I don't see it going Republican. It could be tilt Biden, but I think it's going to be like lean Biden, somewhere around the same margin as Minnesota. So anyway, that's my 2020 presidential election prediction. The election, as I said before, is going to be in 8 months, and this is only the current candidates. Sorry, the top candidates, I should say. So yeah, a lot can change. This is just how I feel the election would be if it were held today and only these two candidates were in it. But anyway, yeah, that's just my prediction as of March. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.